Hi folks, and welcome back to the Storm and Cellar. Is it just me, or has there been a lot of saber rattling going on lately? First, the commander of U.S. Strategic Command says a war with China is inevitable in the near future. President Biden breaks decades of protocol by saying he will defend Taiwan. Russia says they will use nukes if they believe they're losing in Ukraine. And now General Mike Minahan steps up the ante by predicting war with China by 2025. Hey, before we go any further, let me give you a reminder. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. So now listen to these videos and I'll get my thoughts.
A four-star U.S. Air Force general telling his officers to prepare for war with China within 2 years, instructing them to drill service members with, quote, the full understanding that unrepentant lethality matters most. General Mike Minahan, head of the 50,000-member Air Mobility Command, warning, quote, United States presidential elections are in 2024 and will offer Xi a distracted America.
General Minahan fired off a memo to all of his numbered Air Force commanders to prepare for war with China in the next 2 years. So is the general statement excessive or a grim prediction of an inevitable near-term war? Because war between these two superpowers would be horrible on so many levels. Well, let's listen to what Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and General Jack Keane, former Vice Chief of Staff of the U.S. Army, said.
Well, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken warned yesterday that China's government has made a decision to seize Taiwan on a, quote, much faster timeline under Chinese President Xi Jinping. So I know that there was open source reporting already out there that China would invade Taiwan within 18 months. But to hear Anthony Blinken say this, that the calendar has been moved up and that the CCP has decided that it is going in was quite striking.
What that means is we don't have the deterrence that we used to have. So we're incentivizing President Xi to act sooner rather than later.
So what is the tripwire or red line for war with China?
Taiwan is perhaps the most sensitive flashpoint between the U.S. and China. Some experts warning that Beijing's use of force to claim what it sees as its rightful territory is drawing closer.
Yep, you guessed it. Taiwan, and the Chinese strategic goal is to reclaim Taiwan even if it means going to war with the U.S. So is the U.S. equipped mentally for a war with China?
In Korea, United Nations troops push on in the cautious advance against the communists.
Since World War II, America has been involved mainly in fighting third world countries, North Korea, North Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan, as seen here. Well, China is none of these. China is a sophisticated nation and a world power. Also, let's not forget that the U.S. would be dealing with a country whose leadership doesn't hold a high value on life, so they'd be willing to go toe-to-toe with the U.S. while sustaining huge losses. So if the U.S. goes to war with China, one has to wonder, would NATO get involved?
Anders Fogh Ramstein's comments were made during a visit to the self-ruled territory which China has threatened to take over by force.
With Xi Jinping, that we did with Vladimir Putin.
The first official visit by a former NATO Secretary General puts more attention on a saga rarely out of the headlines. If it achieves nothing else, that's still a win for Taiwan.
Of course, this is the previous NATO Secretary General, but with the problems in Ukraine, would our NATO allies really be apt to support the U.S. and Taiwan? I honestly don't see it happening, and I'll tell you why here shortly.
But victory for the U.S. and Taiwan comes at a great cost. The war game assesses that the U.S. loses 10 to 20 combat ships, including 2 aircraft carriers and 200 to 400 military aircraft. In 3 weeks of fighting, the U.S. suffers more than 3,000 troops killed in action.
According to the Center for Strategic and International Studies, who war-gamed a conflict between the U.S. and China, they determined the U.S. would suffer heavy losses in the first week of the war with China. Not to mention the U.S. supply chain is a long way from Taiwan and would greatly affect the U.S.'s ability to wage war. Further, many of the U.S. military high-tech spare parts come from China. Wonder when the U.S. will resolve that issue.
Crucial to this outcome is the stockpile of precision-guided munitions. Taiwan would need more U.S.-supplied Harpoon anti-ship missiles, which may be in short supply because these missiles have been sent to Ukraine. The U.S. needs its own long-range anti-ship missiles, and this supply is one of the big risks.
It runs out within typically the first couple of days.
General Keane concurred that the U.S. is now and has had huge shortages in our armament for some time now, and providing arms to Ukraine has only exacerbated the U.S.'s need for ammunition and missile stockpiles, and I agree with him.
The fact is that the Heritage Foundation, who just produced their annual index of military analysis of the Chinese military and the United States and our allies, indicates, you take the category, ships, airplanes, missiles, defense missiles, you name the category, and the Chinese outgun us, and they have a growing qualitative advantage, not just a quantitative advantage as well.
Is the U.S. prepared for war with China? In light of our current emphasis on developing a woke military, the vaccine mandate debacle, the premature Afghanistan pullout, and historical recruiting problems, I'd say no. The U.S. isn't focused on combat at all. It's more of an afterthought. Couple that with a $31 trillion debt, and we are totally screwed. War tends to bankrupt a country. The British lost most of its empire after World War II. So what about Putin and Xi Jinping?
And President Putin said he wants to intensify military-to-military cooperation with the Chinese. This after his invasion of Ukraine has careened from one setback to another. Now, the Chinese have rhetorically backed Moscow in this conflict, but have yet to provide it with any military hardware, wary of Western sanctions. Wolf?
Russia's had massive losses in the last couple of months and is being pushed back by the Ukrainian forces. Putin will definitely seek more support from Xi. However, I believe it's important to understand the dynamics between Russia and China. Although they both signed an alliance pact and have exercised together, China is reluctant at this point to help Russia for two reasons. One, they don't want to deal with the sanctions, and two, because China doesn't want a strong and powerful Russia on its border. However, Xi knows, being the smart guy that he is, that if war does come, he must divide and conquer. During the Cold War, the national defense strategy was the ability to fight 2.5 wars. It's now the ability to fight one major war and confront several smaller military actions. Therefore, a Russian alliance would tie down NATO forces in Europe. My opinion is the U.S. is not prepared for nor capable of fighting a two-front war with peer competitors. So the question, is America ready for the consequences of massive losses? Carriers sunk, hundreds of aircraft shot down, tens if not hundreds of thousands of soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines killed. Let's not forget about the threat to the homeland. And I don't mean just Hawaii and Alaska. There's a nuclear threat, of course, but how about biological, cyber, and space attacks, which could drastically change America's ability to sustain life as we know it? The real tragedy here is that the West helped build China into not only an industrial giant in the last decades, but also helped them to become a major military threat as well. Okay, hope the video was informative to you. If it was, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments section below. So until next time, make sure your takeoff and landings equal.